closer. I should have kissed you. Your hair was longer. I pulled away from it and moved to the city over the Tappan Zee Bridge. You like the colors.
Hey, welcome back my friends. So last year I saw this super cute stripy fabric, but I didn't get it because I didn't know what to make with it. But this year I saw it again and it was like half off, and so I did get 2 meters. But then it sat on my floor for a little while because I didn't know what to make with it again. But then I figured out I would make a shirt dress. So I found this shirt dress on Mood. Actually, I found the pattern first because I was just browsing their patterns. So I found this shirt dress, and the lady in the pictures looked really nice, really cool with her white dress, and I wanted to make it too. So I printed this pattern out. It's like so many pages, and I tried to only print the ones that were essential to me. And I liked the pattern mostly, but there was one aspect I didn't like, and I'm gonna tell you about it when we get there. So let's get into it. So this is what the website looks like, and you just have to put your email address, and then you will be sent the pattern to your email. And then I printed all of these pattern pieces and tried to piece them together. Well, I had to cut them. Anyway, I got there. What you can see on the right is the back side. I just left the skirt off because I didn't want to print even more pages. I just did it the same way I did the front piece. Here I'm cutting out the front, and there is this really fun dart that you just kind of have to mark out and sew along, and it makes a really good shape actually on your waistline. And then I also decided to cut the sleeve not as long because they were quite long, and I just wanted it to be quite short sleeved. And what you see here is the collar and the yoke we will talk about in a second. This is the sleeve that I shortened, and there's gonna be like a binding on the bottom of the sleeve to finish it. So I started with the easy parts. I made the waist tie. I just kind of cut out a length of fabric that I thought would fit, and I mean they have measurements in the pattern, but I didn't read those, so I just did that and it worked perfectly fine. And then I sewed it right sides together and flipped it inside out. I also snipped the corners for a better look at the corners. And then I also cut out some belt loops. I cut 3, but I only ended up using 2 of them. And with those, I also sewed them together right sides, and I just turned them inside out. And then they were good to go for like at the end when I was done with everything else. So now to the yoke part. This is a very interesting word that I learned. I didn't know that's what it's called, but it's just this panel that connects to the shoulders and to the rest of your bodice piece, your shirt. So it's less wide than the back piece because there is gonna be a little nice cute fold in the middle, which gives you even more room around the shoulders and the waist and everything else. So I started by pinning it right sides together and left the middle open so I could wiggle around the fold until I was satisfied with it. You can see how I did it. They do have instructions on the Mood website, but I didn't not that clearly, at least to me. They weren't very clear, but I just winged it. And then I also ironed the pleat so it would sew nicely. And then I obviously just sewed it down right sides. And then you can see the nice pleat in the middle, nicely right sides together. Now, traditionally, you put a second one on there, that it's like a double layered yoke sandwich. Sounds like egg yolk. Yep, and then you would just sandwich it like you see I did here. I was very careful to sew very close to the previous stitch so that it would match up perfectly, and obviously careful around the pleat to keep it looking nice. Here you can see what it looks like after, and I just gave that a really good press so everything would lay flat and nicely together. Next up, I found some buttons, thank God, from my mom's button stash, and there were like 13, and I think I used them all. And I folded over the button placket like it said in the pattern. 1 centimeter, no, not 1 centimeter, it's an inch. So it's like getting out my inch tape. Just kidding, my tape has 2 measurements, inch and centimeters, which is very good for me in this instance. So I just ironed that over and checked if the buttons would look nice in that size of button placket. Obviously I checked that before, and then I sewed both of those button plackets down. I put both bodice pieces, or just dress pieces, right sides together and sewed the shoulder seams first. After that, I did try it on really quickly to just see how big or small everything is. The armholes are actually quite big. I think I cut out a size too big, but I'll live with it. And then I marked the back and the front of each sleeve so I would put it in right, because sometimes the curve of the back of the sleeve is a little bit different than the front of the sleeve. And then I positioned them this way and pinned them all around the, what is it called? The armhole. Then I sewed along the curve of the sleeve very slowly, trying not to make anything pucker. And then you will obviously sew down the sleeve opening and also the side seam. So I just placed that right sides together and sewed that down. Then I also tried it on to see if I liked the sleeve, which I did, and then I did the other sleeve after that. Here you can see me try it on after I have inserted both sleeves, and I just pinned it together in the front to see how it would look. And here my tie comes in handy, so I can already see what it's gonna look like a little bit. And here you can see me tuck in the sleeve to see how short I want it, because I was also gonna do this binding at the bottom for a little bit of a different look. I made this little loop. I made it so short because I wanted the sleeve to just be short, and otherwise the sleeve would have gotten very long, or longer than I wanted it to be. And so I simply ironed this left sides together so it would make a little double-sided thingamajig you can see here. And then I cut the sleeve to the right length, and I put the little band or the binding around the sleeve. Then I pinned the band around the sleeve all the way around. And I sewed that down. After having done that, I right away serged off the excess of the band Oh, and I also had searched all of the other raw seams. And then I ironed the band flat so it will look nice and crisp. And now for the collar. I watched a very long video of a very lovely, nice woman explaining how to sew a standing collar. And I basically just followed her tutorial because she was so cohesive. And she made this stay stitch, which is gonna, you know, hold your neckline a little bit tighter so nothing stretches in weird ways. And then I interfaced all of the 4 pieces I had. But I think I only needed to interface one of each. So the first thing you do is you place the bigger piece, like the collar piece, together right sides, and you're gonna sew along the top, leaving the bottom, which is closest to your neck, open. And this is where I did not see that this collar pattern was so huge. Like my mom was like, it's kind of big, and I was like, yeah, that's just seam allowance. But the pointy tips of the collar, they were so strange when I tried them on. I didn't see it here while I was working with it, because I had never sewn a standing collar or just a full collar. Anyway, I snipped all the round edges and folded it inside out, gave it a press, that's really important here. And then you're gonna sandwich the collar in between the collar stand, I think it's called, and then you're just gonna sew that down like so. And cut off the excess. As you can see, it kind of never quite lines up for me, but that's not important, you can cut it away. Also, my neck hole ended up being a little bit too big, so I simply ended up sewing the shoulder seams a little bit tighter because it was quite big on me anyway. And then I did what the lady in the explaining video did. I pinned the collar stand to the left side of my neck hole and sewed that down first. It's kind of difficult to get into all the angles and nooks and crannies, but if you just take your time, take it easy, you should be fine. And then I ironed upwards what I just sewed, but then I also cut off this seam allowance to reduce some bulk. Obviously not the entire seam allowance, but just a good amount. And I also snipped in some little slits to give it more of a bendable thing. And then I also ironed in the other part. You can see it a little bit, but you can just fold it over technically. And then I simply folded it right over my previous seam, making sure it's covered, because this is what's going to be in the back. I mean, it's not going to be that visible, but I did try to make it as perfect as I could. And then I started in the middle of the piece for top stitching this down, because again, the lady in the video said that would look nice, and I did agree, so that's what I did. And these like round bits were kind of difficult, but we all got through it, and then you don't have any backwards sewing on the front where you can actually see it, and you only have the back stitch in the back. And this is what it looks like after. As you can see, the collar is kind of big. Yes, exactly, you can see that here. And I was like so desperate and I didn't know how to fix it, but I ended up just opening the stitches like so, and ironing in these two pieces, and then just, you know, figuring out how big I wanted it. And then I cut off the excess and simply hand stitched everything back together. And this is what it looked like in the end. I think I did a pretty good hand stitching job, but it was rather frustrating. I think next time I will just hold the pattern up to me and see. I mean the paper pattern. Here is me angrily cutting off the excess, correcting this pattern for myself and for you to see what I would cut off, what's kind of the minimum I would cut off of this very large, comically large collar. Here is again a before and after. As you can see, it looks very pointy and not quite, I don't think it looks very modern, it looks very 80s. Anyway, I placed my buttons and marked where I wanted them to go. First, I measured how long I needed the buttons to go. For me, it was like from my collar to like 70 centimeters, which reached like my knee. And that was totally enough for me. And then I also made sure to put a button exactly where I wanted the shirt to open, because I didn't want to button it all the way up. And this is how I kind of measured out how many buttons and how far apart I wanted them to be, where the last one and where the most important top one needed to sit. I then marked them out, and I finally learned how to use my buttonhole foot on my machine. And in the beginning I put the wrong stitch and it came out really weird, but I sewed all of these 12 or 13 holes in a matter of freaking minutes, and I'm very happy about that. And then I also ironed over the little ends of the belt loops, and I measured out how long exactly is gonna be down from the armhole to the buttonhole loop, and I simply placed them exactly on the side seam. I feel like they're a little bit visible on my dress. I don't know if I would make them smaller. I don't know what I would do. Maybe I would just leave them off. I'm not sure. But I just top stitched them down. The last thing I had to do was to hem the dress, and then my mom sewed all the buttons for me because she's nice like that. And here it is. Here is a little bit of an up close of the front and the back, and you can see the binding on the sleeves. Of course, it's not perfect. I think maybe I would want it a little bit tighter, but you know, it's very loose, very flowy. I wore it on a very hot day and it was lovely. So yeah, thank you for liking, commenting and subscribing. See you next time.